Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be working on this 2014 Mazda 6. It has about 80,000 miles on it. I am going to be doing a drain and fill on the transmission. Now Mazda says on this transmission fluid it is lifetime. However, they never determine really what lifetime really means. It could be 100,000 miles, it could be 160,000 miles. But it's always good to change your fluids. This is just a little bit over 10 years old. And like I said, it has about 80,000 miles on it. So we're going to go ahead and get that fluid changed out on it. Now, I am going to be using the Mazda OEM filter. This one does have a filter. You can see it right in there. Also using the automatic transmission fluid type FZ. Unlike this Nissan Frontier, the Frontier has a screen in it, so you don't have to replace the screen. It looks something like this. It's just a screen. I am going to have to drop that pan on this Mazda 6 in order to get to this filter and get that removed. Some vehicles have just different ways that they try to filter the transmission fluid, but again on the Mazda 6 we're going to have to remove that. Alright, now it does say in here that the automatic transaxle fluid is 7.8 liters. With a drain and fill, you're not really going to get everything out of it because a lot of it sits in the torque converter. So I went ahead and bought 5 quarts of this automatic transmission fluid. That should be more than enough to do a drain and fill. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you the steps that it takes to do a drain and fill on this Mazda 6. The first thing that we're going to end up doing is we're going to be removing this air intake and the air filter box. Down here there is going to be panels that we're going to have to take off as well, and I'll show you how to do that. Here there's 2 bolts right up front, 10 millimeter. And these are rubber grommets. There's 1, 2, and 3. This should just be able to be pulled up with a little yank. If you look way down here, let me move this out of the way. This is your dipstick for the transmission fluid. We're going to have to remove this panel and this panel in order to get to the transmission pan. And a lot of these bolts are 8 millimeter and also 10 millimeter as well. And then we'll also have some of these snaps as well that we'll have to take off. Doing a little bit of investigation on this leak here is that you start to see how damp it is around this section here as well. I at first thought that, you know, it could be leaking out of these bolts here because that's where it really looks wet, but I don't think it is. I think what we're going to find out is that right up in here, right there, it's hard to point at this, and is your axle shaft. I believe what I'm going to find out once I pull this wheel off and determine is the seal for that axle shaft. As you can see, there's some more of it around this area, and this is all wet here. But other than that, the pan and everything looks real good, so I'm going to have to remove the tire and then look inside here, but I think that's where it's probably going to be more noticeable. Also coming out here to take a look at the bottom pan here is where it's been leaking and dripping down. So it's a very, very slow leak. There's no signs of it anywhere else, and it doesn't drip on the driveway, but that's the only spot there. Alright, I went ahead and took the wheel off to take a look at this leak, and I believe we lucked out a bit. You can start to see how wet this is around where the transmission and pan and transmission come together. Looks like it's this pan seal. I do not see any leaks up under that output shaft. So I think we're good. Now that I'm satisfied that the oil leak isn't related to the output shaft, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to use this oil extractor to remove the transmission fluid. I use it on engine oil as well. It's a lot less messy. Plus I can go ahead and measure what I pull out. This is in liters. It also has quarts as well. But first what we need to do is we need to get down here and remove this 10mm bolt. Pull out the dipstick. Now there is a special way to check the transmission oil. I'll probably show that at the end of the video, but you just can't pull the dipstick out here and check on it like I just did. You have to warm up the engine. Also, you want to make sure that there's no gunk or anything that's built up around this seal. So you want to, when you pull it out, take your rag. Mine had a little bit of engine gunk and debris just on the outside of that rubber gasket. And then also down here, you want to make sure you kind of wipe some of that off. And before I reinstall it, I'll go ahead and do that as well. We got close to 3 out, which I'm expecting there's probably another 3/4, maybe another liter in the bottom of that pan. Next, you'll need an 8mm torque. All right, next we're going to start taking off the bolts here for the pan. They're 10mm. All right, we want to take the filter off as well while we're down here. Inspecting this pan here, this is where I'm thinking that the oil pan was leaking. You can see some debris and gunk in there. And then there's some missing gasket seal like right here. And then also there's a little bit of oil even past this first layer of protection in here as well. So I'm going to take the rest of this oil and put it in the fluid extractor container, and then I'll get an exact measurement. There's still oil in the pan as well. So I'll go ahead and put that in there, and then we'll get on to cleaning things up, because there's a magnet right here that needs to be cleaned up. Obviously the gasket needs to be cleaned up, and then also on the transmission itself, I got to clean that up as well. What works really good to get the gunk out of the bolt holes is just a smaller bit screwdriver, a couple turns. What you don't want to do is if you leave that stuff in there, you put the bolt back in, it could push some of that old gasket out and then create a void. And also what I found is a nice little brush actually was able to clean up the last bit that I couldn't really get with a rag or anything else. But this is looking pretty good. clean up these bolts, I'm just going to put this into some brake cleaner for now, let it set for a little bit, and then I'm going to clean them off here with my wired brush. That should pretty much take care of them and clean them up. We're going to start with putting back on this filter. The bolts are going to be about 85 inch-pounds. The manual says around 80 to 88, but I set my torque wrench already up. What we're going to do is oil these gaskets here. Alright, that is in there. Now we're going to fix up the pan and get that ready to go back on. Now we're going to use some of this transmission gasket to make a seal around this pan. This is RTV Sealant. One thing we want to make sure before we start, just grab a rag, use some brake cleaner, just make sure that the top of that doesn't have any grease and debris. And then you also want to go on the inside of that bolt hole. You want to have pretty much the same consistency all the way around, maybe like 1/8 of an inch. Okay, what the directions say with this RTV seal is that we don't want to torque these bolts down. We're just going to hand tighten them, and then we'll come back an hour later and then we'll go ahead and torque those. These bolts need to be torqued anywhere between 71 and 88 inch-pounds. So I've just set my torque wrench to about 85 and we'll get started. When you're going through it, you want to kind of do an X pattern through these so that you're not tightening one side all the way down at once. Alright, this drain plug here needs to be torqued at 23 to 30 foot-pounds. So I've set my wrench to about 26. So oddly enough, I was able to pull out 6 quarts. I don't know if it was because it was setting overnight and it's actually up almost 8 inches there off the ground, tilted backwards. Anyhow, I had to go buy another quart of this, and total, the Mazda Transmission 2.5 Skyactiv has 8 quarts in it. So the more of the old stuff that you get out, the better. Now before I go ahead and put the panels back on, we just want to double check the work. Let's see what we've got. I don't see any leaks. Nothing appears to be wet. To check the transmission fluid on a Mazda 2.5 Skyactiv engine, what you want to go ahead and do is we got to remove these 2 bolts here and remove this air duct out of the way. We're going to keep this attached. This is the cold air intake. I want to set that aside. Give this a yank. Pull that out of the way, set it aside. there's a 10mm bolt down here on this transmission dipstick. You want to set that aside. Now we want to reattach the air box. We're going to twist this up like this. And this is required setup. If there's no air flowing through the cold air intake sensor and into the engine will just stop. And then also have access to that dipstick down there as well. So right now I can go ahead and turn on the car. I already have been out and warming up the engine anyhow, but we're going to double check the temp. If you don't have a scan gauge or a computer to look it up, you can just use one of these infrared sensors. And just taking a look at approximately where that fluid lands is about right there. So we're between the marks, we should be good. If you thought this video was good and informational, go ahead and give me a like. Better yet, subscribe and you get the latest notifications when these videos come out. If you have any questions or comments, place them in the comment section below. I appreciate your support and we'll see you in the next video.